Hey ya folks, how's it going? I'm Lexi and I really like tabletop games. So much so that we review one here once a week, every week at the gaming table. Hopefully in under 10 minutes so I can help you find your next game. If that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to subscribe and keep watching this video. Today we are talking about a game I purchased quite a while ago that I lent out to another person and then promptly forgot existed. When I did remember that it existed, I thought I should review it here. Especially now that I've properly read it, I'm pretty excited to talk about it. This game is not a super recent one, but hey, it's my channel and I like to review a bit of everything. This is Burning Wheel Gold Edition. When I first heard of this game, I was under the impression that it was a generic role-playing system. That was incorrect. It's a generic fantasy role-play system. It's broadly inspired by Ursula Le Guin, Tolkien, and some general fantasy folklore. The idea with this book is that it can be a springboard for someone to use it to make their own game and their own sort of fantasy adventure. I will say though, the scope is mostly focused on European fantasy. The most evidence you get for a setting in this game actually comes from the life paths. These are used to build characters. You get life paths for dwarves, elves, orcs, and humans. There are also some location-focused ones. In terms of locations, you get things like villages, noble court settings, or even heading out to sea. And some of these life paths even have dedicated sub-life paths, like the noble court one has a sub-setting that is specifically for the people who sort of work at court who are not the nobles. To me, these life paths suggest a pretty broad, rough historical timeline that your fantasy can take place. Of course, fantasy settings exist out of our time, and they are constructions of the past that we have modified for our own uses. Aside from that, if I were to make some direct historical parallels, I see some paths that definitely work with an ancient world-inspired setting, such as being a poor galley slave who has to row a galley. Whereas I do also see some that to me lend themselves to a much later time in history, I would say up to the 18th century, such as a court bailiff. This game is also pretty Eurocentric. Your dwarves, your elves, your orcs, they're all pretty standard Tolkien-inspired versions. And all of those location subsettings I mentioned are mostly going to be European focused. The manual does suggest that you can make up your own life paths for your own new setting, but they don't really give you any dedicated instructions on that. Apparently there is a supplement which goes into that. I do appreciate that the life paths in this game require the players to have been doing the job for a certain number of years. I say job, but that's a really loose title. There are life paths like village layabout, and then actual ones that are jobs like Master Forger. This game definitely gives the impression that the characters in it have been doing things and have been busy on their own time long before adventure started to call to them. For a game master of this game, the life paths can be really influential and helpful in forming what your setting for your game is going to be. I would definitely, as a game master, be letting my players know what life paths are going to be helpful and which ones might be out of place. Burning Wheel is a pretty crunchy game. To save boring you all with the experience of me explaining every single mechanic in the game, I will just try to cover a few things in broad strokes. This game uses pools of d6s. You generally build these pools from your character's attributes or skills. You roll your pool and you hope to have more successes than the number set to do what you want. 4s and aboves count as successes. For simple tests in this game, it's generally going to be a single dice pool roll. There is an option that if the dice pool fails to do what you want, the game master can offer you to do still what you intended, but with a price. Burning Wheel is a bit unusual in that it encourages the game master to say what will go wrong if the dice pool fails, rather than hiding that to be revealed if it goes wrong. I will say character creation for this game is gonna take a long time. Character creation is done by layering different life paths on top of each other to create the character as it is now. They do give you some really interesting skills, and sometimes you get to pick an additional skill. You can choose your skills from an extensive list, or potentially make your own with the group's blessing. Along with the layered life paths, characters also get beliefs, instincts, and traits. A belief is, well, what the character sort of holds dear. An instinct is sort of a pre-programmed response that your character will do when the appropriate trigger is put in front of them. That is regardless of whether or not that was a good idea. And your traits are all about your personality. If you roleplay these 3 factors well, you can actually get assigned points throughout the game by everyone in the group. These points are called Arthur points. There's more than one kind of point within Arthur points, but I won't get into that today. Generally, gaining a new skill or improving one that your character already has actually requires work in this game. I quite like, for example, for academic stuff, there is a table to see how hard your character is going to have to study to learn it in different time periods. You do this by rolling dice, but the difficulty threshold gets more difficult the shorter time that you are trying to get your character to master the subject, like cramming before an exam. It is a bit difficult to succinctly describe combat in this game. There's a lot of maneuvers you can engage with. You can even plan your character's actions a few steps ahead at a time, and then you sort of roll to see how it worked out. There are actually a few sheets and tables you can use to track this, which I find very helpful. In this game, it's actually the same format for physical combat as it is like a battle of intellect. It's called a battle of wits. If you want to engage with someone in a debate, it is literally structured like a combat, where you have maneuvers like subterfuge or to like dodge or poke holes in someone's argument. You're basically engaging in different rhetorical skills to try win the debate like you would win a combat. I will say this form of combat is pretty involved, but for people who are looking for something that's more interesting in their combat, this is definitely going to be of interest to them. I am running low on time, so I can't quite cover everything in the Burning Wheel system, but I will quickly try cover some of the magic rules. Some magic is fast to cast and you can do it in battle. Other magic sort of requires rituals and a lot of time and concentration to perform. Magic in this game can also go very dangerously wrong. There's a wheel that's included in the manual which you can use to calculate how a spell goes awry by rolling some d6s. One of the things that can go really wrong is you can summon a probably very hostile, probably evil entity, and then you have to deal with that. You also can use that wheel that I described to build new spells, though you do have a lot that are included in the game. I will say sometimes this game manual introduces concepts or words without much explanation, and I did occasionally have to read between the lines of what the author meant. I will say while this is a very crunchy game, it is definitely narrative focused. And I will say for me the mechanics do work well to create a story. The potential settings are pretty broad, though I do think it does definitely have a Eurocentric, medieval-esque flavor to it. And I would like some entries that are a bit less Eurocentric. I will say this manual is nearly 600 pages long though, so I don't know where they would fit. I did find it interesting that the creator of the game inserted themselves into the manual with 3 different personae. These are represented by a devil. One of them's wearing an academic hat. One of them is like angry, and the other one is sort of sobbing. It seems to cover 3 broad moves like introspective and studious, irate and ranting, and overwhelmed with emotion. I wasn't quite quite sure what to think of that. As I understand it, there was some controversy about the game designer and another game he made. As I understand it, the designer for Burning Wheel was going to work with someone who was rather infamous on another project, and it got shut down because of that other person's reputation. For me, though, the game Burning Wheel stands solidly by its own merits, so I don't regret purchasing it. I think it's an interesting manual just to read from a game design perspective. I actually think this game manual is more for a game master rather than a player. To make an adventure in this game system, you do actually have to curate some of the rules and a lot of the content that you are given with this manual. I would recommend, if you're going to be playing Burning Wheel, that your game master curate the content that they want to see appear in the game, and either mark the pages or maybe even have a PDF copy where they can point to what sections they want to use. I think just handing a player the whole book might be a scooch intimidating for some, and they might not even get to use it. This game is absolutely designed to be a multi-session experience, and I think even for tabletop campaigns, long campaigns of 10 plus sessions, a single session does miss out, I think, on some of the more interesting things that happen in this game. If you are looking for a simple fantasy tabletop role-playing game that doesn't take a lot of work to run, I would say this is probably not it. But if you are interested in a game that is mechanically interesting and narrative driven while still having some good crunch to it, then this would absolutely be one I would be recommending. Especially if you're the sort of game master that rarely ever runs the established setting you are handed in a manual, but runs your own. This could be a great tool for your next story. This game is $35 US. If you want a game manual that will support your own setting and your own creativity, then this could be a great option for that price. I do think reading this game alone from just a design perspective is also super worthwhile. So this video is definitely a bit longer than my usual ones, so I will try to keep this outro super short. Generally speaking, do you prefer high or low crunch games? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm a horrible fence sitter who changes my mind daily. While you're in the comments, I encourage you to subscribe, maybe like the video, and turn on notifications. Perhaps you could even share this video with a friend. It actually really helps this channel get more attention. I also have a Ko-Fi page where you can donate to help keep this channel running. I hope you're all well, and I look forward to seeing you next time at the gaming table. Bye!